Thank you for that. So I am Alexa Hamill. I am one of the associate directors for advising and programs here at Beyond Barnard. I'm also an alum of the college. I graduated in 2013. And in addition to doing these career skills presentations, I do individual advising for students and alumni on any career-related topic, graduate school advising with a particular focus on pre-law. I oversee the Mentors in Residence program, which is our usually once a week. It's a little bit less now that it's virtual, but where on Fridays we have alums who are able to meet in small groups of students to talk about their job function and industry, which is a form of networking. And I oversee Barnard Connect, our mentoring and networking platform. So very familiar with networking, which is really why I love doing this particular career skills and why I find it to be so valuable, kind of regardless of the career stage or where your interests are. And I'll explain a little bit more as we go on. So we're going to be talking about networking, both in the form of Barnard Connect as well as LinkedIn. So here's going to be our agenda for today. And if you see me looking down, it's just I'm checking on the time because I want to leave as much time as possible for Q&A because I know there are a lot with networking. So the agenda is going to be generally just what is networking? What does it even mean to network? Why is it important? How to effectively networking, again, both on Barnard Connect and LinkedIn. And I'll actually pull up the site so you can see it firsthand. Informational interviewing, and more so about what that is. Just generally, it would be similar to a format in terms of interviewing like Q&A, but informational meaning that you didn't necessarily apply for a position and get asked to interview. This is something that you're looking to interview to get information from whoever you're networking with. And then finally, how to professionally follow up and how to maintain those professional relationships within your network. So what exactly is networking? So networking, I think that word in and of itself can cause a lot of stress and anxiety just hearing that word. So I kind of like to just reframe networking as having a conversation with somebody that may know more about a topic than you do. It's just a way of getting information and things that you may not be able to readily get online. Insights like challenges, what they enjoy, even though you can see their information, maybe in retrospect as they reflect what they could have done differently or what they would have done the same. So, people network all the time. I think people don't even realize when they are networking. It could be networking with people that you know, new people. So just know that, networking, I think, can cause a lot of stress. But I think if you reframe it and just think of it more as just information gathering and having that conversation, I think it can sometimes lift that weight off of this topic. And so these relationships can be developed and maintained both in person and online. And you do not need to know somebody personally to network. And I think that's a big point because I think sometimes, especially with alums that you may not know, I think the thought is like you need to really know them or you'll be bothering them. But, if they are on LinkedIn, if they are on Barnard Connect, they're opening themselves up for you to reach out to them and to network with them. So you do not need to know somebody personally in order to network. So why is it important to network? So it's extremely important to network now more than ever. I think that a big thing when I hear about students who are maybe great applicants and you all have so much going on, you're all really accomplished, but maybe it's you're not necessarily getting that interview or you're not getting noticed amongst maybe those top applicants and then moving to the next round. And 9 times out of 10, when I kind of say, have you been networking? The answer is most likely no. And so the reason why that is so critical is because during job search now and more recently, it's not just enough to actually be applying online. It's really critical and part of any stage that you're in, whether it's just exploring careers, actually searching for a job, moving up in your job, having somebody who can speak on your behalf and can say, I've personally spoken to this person and this is why I think they would be a great fit, kind of takes you from just being a great applicant to actually getting an interview. So within whatever stage you're at, it is very critical for you to be networking. So this should be part of your professional toolbox, regardless of where you are. And so some opportunities and possible leads may not have even been, you may not have even been aware of it had you not spoken to somebody, especially now during the pandemic where maybe there aren't as many openings as they once were, or maybe they're not necessarily recruiting as heavily. Sometimes you can be hearing about an opportunity that's coming up or something that maybe they're not necessarily advertising as widely, but because you made such a good impression, they're letting you know about an opportunity. And like I said, sometimes it really is the only way of knowing about an opportunity, especially with certain industries like consulting, where they may not be posting their opportunities on so many of these general job boards. Without actually having to speak to somebody, you may not have even known that that job was in existence. So when you're thinking about networking, and this is why I say sometimes students don't even realize that they are networking, is because you can network with people that you already know. It doesn't just have to be that it's these cold emails that you're sending. And I like to say to start with people that you know, because you already have that comfort level. So I think, again, kind of taking that stress off of networking by starting with people that you're already comfortable with, I think is a nice transition into networking. And then also, you don't need to just start developing a rapport from scratch with them. These are people who already know you, know your etiquette professionally. You know, you're not necessarily having to prove yourself as much because they already know you. So, you know, these could be friends, peers, advisors, professors, people in your clubs, previous supervisors. So another thing with networking that you want to think about is not just necessarily who's in the exact position or in the exact industry at that exact company, but just letting people in your network know what you're interested or what you're considering, because you never know who they may know or who they may come across that's actually a great fit. So just put this on people's radar to let them know, you know, again, you know, people know a lot of other people and they may not be the best person, but they could maybe connect you, and having that middleman that knows both of you can be really essential. So this is how I would reach out to existing contacts. And it's really critical to know that this is existing, and you'll see why. So with existing, again, they already know your rapport. So I would never tell anybody, if you don't know them, to instantly start asking for referrals and intros, because it takes time to develop that professional rapport, and nobody wants to feel like they're being used necessarily, just reaching out to them to get something from them. If you already have the relationship and it's a little bit more of that back and forth, you know, you already have established that. So it's okay for you to kind of start out the gate with it. So you'd be telling them you're classier, or that you're graduating and looking for something full time. You're looking for opportunities to gain experience in, but would also be open to X, Y, and Z. And this is a really important point, because you don't want to limit yourself too much, because if they don't necessarily have an opportunity in this exact job function, but maybe they have relationships or opportunities in related fields, by letting them know that you're interested in a couple of different opportunities, it just opens that up a little bit more to kind of, it'll be up to you to say yes or no versus just limiting yourself to only one specific opportunity. And then letting them know that you like referrals and introductions to people who can help with additional advice and information. And again, I would never tell somebody to do this if they don't know them, but you already have a rapport with this individual. And your goal, whether it be somebody you already know or somebody that you're going to be getting to know, you want to establish relationships prior to your job search. If there is one or two things that you're going to take from this presentation, this is probably the first thing that you should take away. And the biggest thing I see is because when you are actually going to be looking for referrals and introductions, you don't want to have to wait for the job to open for you to then start to put the feelers out or just start developing those professional relationships. By having those relationships in place already, it's already on people's radar, and you've already developed professional rapport with people that you don't know. So that way, when the application does open, you already have people in your network to reach out to, because there's not enough time to really utilize your network for recruiting purposes once the application is open. So make sure, and this is also good because even if it's not the recruiting cycle, you could still be working towards a successful position not by necessarily hitting a submit on an application, but by building your network. So this is something you can be doing all year round, and especially things that you should be doing when there is a lull in the recruiting cycle. Okay, so we're gonna start with Barnard Connect. So for those of you that don't have an account or don't know what Barnard Connect is, this was a new platform that we just developed this past year. It has over 750 alumni and over, I think, 1,100 students now. So this is all volunteer based. We didn't upload anybody. These are all students and alums that said, I'm personally interested in mentoring or getting mentored from an alum. So starting here, kind of similar to starting out with people that you already know, I think is really helpful because one, you know that the alums on the platform are really actively seeking to mentor somebody if they volunteer to be on the site. So I think it kind of takes that nerve off of, should I just be reaching out to anybody on this really big platform? So I think starting here is good. And then what's great about this site is it's exclusive to Barnard students and Barnard alums. So you have this community just built in. It's exactly the same as what you would use LinkedIn for, but it's exclusive to our community, which is really helpful. So let me just log into Barnard Connect so you can see that. So this is what it looks like. Well, this is from an alum's perspective. They have different features since students can only be mentees. So I'll switch to a student. So let's say you don't have an account. When you just Google Barnard Connect, it should be the first that comes up. It'll say join the community. You would put in registration information and then I would approve your account and then you'll have access because I just have to confirm that you're a Barnard student. But once you are confirmed, then you'll see that you have all of these different features. So you can explore the community, which would be searching for industry expertise. You can search for specific companies. Are they a first-gen student? What are your long-term goals? So kind of filtering it in. Other things that are really useful. So the resources is something that I think is definitely underutilized, but super helpful. So these are guides that the advisors and I specifically created to address common networking and mentoring questions. So like, what is networking? You know, how can I email potential mentors and what does that look like? So definitely take advantage of this. Again, I think it's something that, I know I just X'd out of it. I think it's definitely something that is going to be really critical to you kind of throughout the process, because right now you may not be ready to network, but that's always there for you to kind of reference. So let me just go back to that. Okay. Let me go back here. Okay. So again, you know, what's great about this is it's a community just for you. You can connect with them. And then in addition to connecting with them, you can either send a message, you can propose a time to meet, and then you would be able to get an inbox, or the alum would get an inbox and you can communicate there. You could take it offline, kind of whatever the case may be. And also what's great about Barnard Connect is it gives you suggested phrasing for when you're sending that initial message. So there are definitely some perks to being here. So again, I would say start with the networking on Barnard Connect, and then we can take it to LinkedIn and I can show you that as well. Okay, so let's say you kind of exhaust the list of people on Barnard Connect, then I would say to go to LinkedIn because that's where there are thousands and thousands of alums. Just to preface it, so I know I keep saying alums, if they're on LinkedIn, you can network with anybody. It's a networking site. And again, this goes back to, you don't need to know somebody personally to network with them. We just like to say to start with alums because you already have that Barnard connection. Even if you don't personally know them, you know, alums definitely have kind of that investment in helping students. So, you know, there's just that much more of an enticement for them to respond. So when you're on LinkedIn, you would, so the way that, there's a couple of ways that you can find alums, but the way that I would suggest that you do it is, so if you search for Barnard College, the first option that should come up should be the school itself. And then when you scroll, sorry, it's a little bit slower when you share the screen. Then you would click on alumni. And then you can see here that there are all of these different filters that you can use. So there could be a specific company. It could be, you know, where location-wise, a lot of people, excuse me, are interested in going abroad. So you can go by location. You could go by industry, say, you know, what are psych majors? I was a psych major. What are psych majors in education doing? And then people like me that are in higher ed that were psych majors will come up. So then what'll happen is everybody that meets the criteria, and anything that's not already pre-populated filter-wise, you can always put in a keyword or a title or something here. And then whoever meets that criteria will come up below. So you do need to be connected with the person in order to send them a message. So don't worry about getting premium or anything. Once you're connected, that message box will be unlocked. So when you connect with them, what I would suggest that you do is, and I'm just checking to see if I have that on the next slide. Okay, I don't. So what I would suggest that you do is first hit connect, and then it'll prompt you to add a personal note. And I would suggest adding that personal note so that way they know that you're a Barnard student. So, you know, currently a senior at Barnard College, interested in the legal field, would be great to hear about your experiences. Something really short. It's just, again, so that they know that you're a Barnard student and they're alone. That's your connection. Once they accept your connection request, then you can send them a message. So I would suggest first and foremost, make sure that your profile is completely up to date before sending this out. Reason being is you don't want to include everything about what you're doing and what you've done in that message. One, because you're limited in terms of characters, and two, they really kind of want to know what you're getting at. So they can, I would say you can include like a line in your message about maybe what's most relevant that they should know, but they should really go to your profile to kind of see everything that you've done. So really in that message, you're just thanking them for the connection request. You are, again, if you wanted to include a line, you know, I've been working in government on campus and in internships for the past 3 semesters. And I am really interested in knowing more about why you chose to be in the nonprofit realm. And so I have a sample of a message. And so when we go to that slide, I'll explain a little bit more about, you know, why each of those sentences really count and how it's good to phrase it this way because there's just a better chance of them responding. And then within the same message, after asking those questions and maybe referencing something about their profile, say, do you have time to, well, not meet in person, but when we go back to in person, meet in person, but at the least at this point, video chat or speak over the phone. And I'll explain why that's also important rather than just going back and forth over email. So again, that's how you search for alums. Connect, send that personal note to let them know who you are. Once they accept it, you could send a message where, again, I'll go over a sample so you could see a little bit more, and I'll explain why each of those lines really count. And then they'll get that, and that's where you can take it from there. So adding new contacts to your network. So now we're going to be going over what would be important to include on your LinkedIn profile. So here are, okay. So first and foremost, include a professionally appropriate picture. So it doesn't need to be something that you got professionally taken, like by a professional photographer. It just means that it would be like shoulders up, headshot, just you in it, neutral background. If you wanted to put like a blazer or a sweater or something like professionally appropriate attire, you can do that as well. But that's really all you need. You can just have a friend take it on an iPhone for you. That's it. Make sure you complete each section of your profile, including description. So sometimes I see profiles that just have maybe like a title or the company, but you do want to include everything that's from your resume on your profile, including the bullets. Because again, they don't necessarily have your resume in front of you and you don't want to include all of that information in the message. So just have everything there on your profile. Align your profile with professionals in your desired field. So again, kind of being strategic with what are you including depending on what you're interested in. Brand yourself by making your headline and summary section specific. So this is a little different than like what you would see on your resume. So I'll go back here. So I'll go back to, so here, so this is where you can see. So the headline is where this person has mascot Barnard College. So If you wanted to, like maybe you're interning at Planned Parenthood and you're looking to be joining another nonprofit, like you can have Planned Parenthood intern versus just having student, because that will stand out even more since it's really relevant. So you can edit your headline. And then the summary section here is really important because this is, especially if maybe you have a bunch of different experiences, this will summarize what's most relevant and now what you're looking to do. So maybe you don't have tons of nonprofit, but you have experience in fundraising. So maybe you're highlighting the fact that you've been in fundraising and now you're interested in working at a nonprofit. So it's letting them know what's relevant and now where you're looking to go, just in case, especially maybe it's hard to tell just from looking at your experiences. So those are two features that I think are important that differ from a resume, but important to include on your LinkedIn profile. So including keywords that you're seeing across multiple job descriptions. So what's good about that is more so, especially if recruiters are looking for certain skill sets, if you include that on your profile, then when they're searching for those keywords, your profile will come up. And it's also good to just do that because then again, you're branding yourself and you're aligning your profile with what you would typically see in that field. Join groups, so joining different groups, you know, there are different groups even within Barnard. There's the writing fellows, there's English majors, like there's so many different groups that you can join. I would also say to follow companies you're interested in. Sometimes they will announce certain job opportunities or info sessions that you're having, and it also just shows your interest. So feel free to join groups, follow companies, things like that. Personalize your connection request, which we already said in terms of adding the note and the message. Requesting recommendations. So you can see it's towards the bottom of your profile, you can request that maybe previous supervisors, professors, peers write you a recommendation. So when somebody's looking at your profile, it'll say, you know, like I did something, I wrote a recommendation for a peer career advisor. And so now whoever looks at her profile will see that she was a PCA and see the recommendation about all the great things that I thought she did. So it just kind of further instills she's not just working, but she's also a great worker that her supervisor recommends. So that's just another great thing that you can add as well. That's an additional feature. Okay. So informational interviews. So again, these are conversations. Interviews, you guys know what they are. You know, you apply for something, you get invited, and then they get to know you more. So it's similar in terms of the format, which is why it's interviews, but it's informational because the point of the interview is to gather information. So the thing with informational interviews is it's not just about making the connection. That's not necessarily where the job ends in networking. Because you are reaching out to them, it's really your responsibility to lead that conversation. You know, you reach out to them again, so they're expecting you to go in with having a specific set of questions. Generally, it will kind of go in its own direction as you continue through the conversation, but at least in the beginning, it's your responsibility to really lead that. And what's good about also having questions is a lot of times if you leave it too open-ended, you kind of leave that conversation not necessarily maybe getting the information that you were hoping for or you didn't know. So by also asking those questions, you're directing it towards really specifically what you feel like is lacking maybe in your knowledge base or what you want to know more about. You also want to be doing research before actually going on this informational interview for a couple of reasons. So one, it just shows your level of professionalism. You prepared for something in advance. For anything in the professional world as a student, like you need to prepare in advance. You don't want to necessarily make it the alum's responsibility to have to do the work for you, right? Which is why, like, I don't love the question, can you tell me about a day-to-day of blah, blah, blah? Because that's something that you can find just by doing research on your own, Googling, looking at job descriptions, looking at the company's website. So you want to try to ask questions that shows what you already know, but then maybe what's lacking. So if you're interested in doing marketing and, you know, you're interested in how maybe marketing differs working in finance and marketing versus working in media. So you can kind of you can say to them, you know, I know in media marketing, you're doing X, Y, and Z. If you're in finance, this is what you're doing. Can you speak more to X? So they know that you've done some of that background. It shows your professionalism. you're not leaving the homework up to the alum to do, but this is information you can't necessarily just see from doing the work on your own. And again, you are never asking for a job, especially in that first round of conversations. This is your opportunity to seek advice, to get advice, to build that professional rapport, and to maintain and build that trust. If you're asking for a job right away, they don't necessarily know who you are. And when you do make a referral or recommendation, it's a reflection of them too. So they want to make sure that whoever they're recommending, they feel is somebody who's professional, is somebody that would be a positive reflection of them. So this is just your opportunity, again, to gather information, seek advice from them. So I'm going to pause here so you can take a look at what I would typically see as the informational interview request. What's going to be a little bit different is this would be as if somebody had their email. So of course, if it's in a message on LinkedIn, you would basically just be skipping the dear blah, 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 blah. So it would just be really the content, what's in the actual paragraphs. So I'll pause here so you guys can read that through and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so a couple of key things to note that I was referencing earlier, why each of these pieces of information is really important. So first, who are you? You know, they can look at your profile again for all the information about things that you're involved in. You don't have to say, you know, I'm involved in this club, I'm doing this and doing that. Really just a sentence about, you know, currently what your class year is, your major, maybe a sentence about what's most relevant about you. Then what's your reason for contacting them? So referencing something specific on their profile that can show you're not just sending this generic message out to anybody. You want to reach out specifically to them because of this reason. More information about you. Again, this is maybe the sentence where you can say, I've been doing X for X number of semesters, specifically how they can assist. So what's important about this is if it's too broad, it goes back to this idea of like, I'm not going to do the homework for you, right? Like if the question is like, what does somebody who's in finance do? It's like, you know, I know about my role and I know you can find out more about my role just by researching it, but maybe there are some things that are specific that you can't just Google or research on your own. And this is a perfect example. So like, how does somebody who comes from a liberal arts degree, maybe wasn't a finance or business major, parlay that liberal arts degree into finance? And so that person's saying like, okay, this is something that you can't just readily find online. It's something I can answer because I came from a liberal arts background and now I'm in investment banking. So this is really saying I can answer these questions and this is something that I know would be something you can only find out from speaking to somebody. And then also including intentions to meet. Like I said, obviously you're not necessarily suggesting in person right now, but it's really important to at least have a Zoom call or speak over the phone because one, they'll have more of that personal investment if they actually hear your voice and you're having that dialogue. And then also maybe some of the questions that you're not necessarily thinking about, but based on your interests and the dialogue, they may say to you, oh, have you ever considered this job function? And because you may not even know that that had existed, you may not have thought to ask about it. But because you know, they heard and you were having that dialogue, you were able to maybe change potentially completely or slightly what your career trajectory looks like. And then in terms of following up, I always say if you don't hear back, you can do one follow-up. So I usually say wait maybe like a week or two after and just respond and just say, you know, following up to my previous email. If this is a busy time, let me know if there's a better time to speak. One follow-up is fine. Sometimes it gets lost in the weeds, but I wouldn't suggest following up any more than that. Okay, so following up after you've actually spoken to this person. So you want to write a thank you email within 24 hours. It can be really brief, just thanking them for their time, maybe something specifically that stuck out about the conversation. If there's any follow-up, like, they have suggestions for your resume, they want you to reach out to a suggested contact, do that in a timely fashion. They also expect you to, follow up with them and be proactive because they're kind of giving you their advice. So it's your responsibility to also take their advice and follow up. Specifically, if they say to reach out to somebody else, CC the person that referred you, so that person that you're contacting knows what the connection is, and then that person who connected you knows that you're taking them up on their offer. And then always send thank you emails to anybody you talk to for the smallest of things, because if you don't, that can leave a bad impression on the alum. And so they may not be as interested in helping you in the future. And then they also may not just be as interested in helping other Barnard students if they're kind of getting not the best impression. So make sure you thank them just for a reflection of yourself, your professionalism, to enlist in future potential assistance, and then also just representing kind of Barnard in the community. Maintaining relationships. So something else that happens is, and a really common question I get is, how can you maintain the relationship? So you have that first conversation, you have the second one, but now maybe you've got all of your questions answered and it's still a little bit of a lull in the recruiting cycle. So you don't have to reach out to them on a weekly basis. Every so often, if something comes up, and these are great topics that can come up that can kind of prompt you towards reaching out and keeping that connection. Following up with occasional updates. If you got a new internship, any accomplishments, anything that would stand out about yourself. Maybe there's something on the news that came across that's really relevant about their industry or about their company. Congratulating them if they've been promoted or changed jobs. On LinkedIn, it's really easy to see that. So if there's any sort of update, congratulating them. And then even something as simple as, sometimes birthdays are listed around holiday season, reaching out again. These are just really easy ways to maintain that contact. Again, it doesn't have to be super frequently, but it's just to maintain that, so it's not like you're having that first conversation and then there's kind of nothing in between that and application cycle. So here are my final thoughts before we get into Q&A. So networking is a natural part of both social and professional life. You are extremely limiting yourself if you're not including networking as part of anything related to future opportunities. It opens doors both for opportunities you never knew existed, so you're that much closer to the start of your career, to being in a position you enjoy. And then it will also have you stand out when you're actually interested in getting a job and getting an interview. Online tools have made it easier, LinkedIn, Barnard Connect, but obviously in person, not now, but anything that's actually face-to-face over Zoom or speaking over the phone is really important. I wouldn't just continue doing that over message because you're not really building those relationships. It's something that's really impersonal when it's just back and forth. And the more practice, the better off you'll be. So continue to practice, the beginning times, just kind of push yourself to doing it. I think, again, starting with people you may know or Barnard Connect can ease into it. But just like anything else, like interviewing, like anything else related to your job, the more you do it, the less scary you can see that it's really nothing to be afraid of. And also just the more comfortable you'll get with knowing how to prepare, knowing what to say, and being comfortable having that dialogue. And the biggest thing also is there's no downside. So, if you think about it, if you reach out to somebody and they don't respond or they can't help, like, that's not a downside. You're not ruining your reputation. You're not burning any bridges. They just can't help. But if they can help, you could be getting a job. You could be finding out a potential job function. You could be finding out a better resource that opens so many doors for you. So there's nothing negative that comes out of this. There's only upsides to it. So there's kind of no reason why you shouldn't be doing this. And you really are limiting yourself if you're not incorporating networking into your plan. So if you kind of, as you're nervous or if you're concerned about it, if you just think there's nothing that bad that happens when you do it, there's only upside. I think also hopefully that will allow you to kind of take advantage of opportunities that is only here to serve you positively. So those are my thoughts on networking. So I'm going to stop sharing right now because I know usually there are a lot of questions when it comes to this topic. So before we get into Q&A, again, if you didn't necessarily sign in before, if you go into the chat, if you can just register name and uni just so we can keep track of that. So now I will open it up to Q&A. So you can either unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat.
Hi, I want to ask, like, how do we usually start networking? Like, what's the first step of it? By writing a cold email or something?
Yeah, so it depends on what platform you're using. If you have their email, then you would be writing that email that was on the slide that had the example. If it's on Barnard Connect, it would be a message that you can send through the platform itself. And then if it's on LinkedIn, then it would be the adding a note when you're sending the connection request and then sending the message itself once they accept your connection request. So it just depends on the platform and how you're corresponding, but the information that you're including in that initial message is going to be the same throughout.
Okay. Do we have a template for a cold email?
So that slide that I had, I'm not sure if you came in late, but the slide that I had is an example of a cold email. And then also if you go on Barnard Connect, under the resources section, there's a guide, and one of the guides says emailing potential mentors, and there's more information and an example on that as well.
Okay, got it. And I also have another question. Like, I'm already a junior at Barnard College, and I have like submitted some of my online applications to most of the intern jobs like for 2021. But like, is it too late for me to like start networking right now? Will it be helpful for like the internships that I already applied for next year?
Yeah, so it depends on the timeline, right? So I always suggest networking before, because if you're just starting to network now and you've already submitted your application, there's a good chance that they probably have already looked at it or about to. So it's difficult for you to leverage that potential referral if you're going to be starting this relationship from scratch, because again, you're not asking for that referral right away because you need to develop that rapport. So, you can start networking, you can do networking whenever you want, but in terms of really leveraging that, there's just less of a chance of being able to do that for recruiting purposes after you actually submit the application.
Okay. Do you have any like suggestion for me at this point for networking?
Yeah, so again, you can be networking now, and you can network and follow the same strategies that I had before as if you were doing it before submitting it. Yeah, so you can follow the exact same thing. I would just kind of set your expectations though in terms of being able to actually leverage that, because it would take some time for you to actually be able to leverage that for recruiting. And so by the time that would actually happen, there's a good chance if you've already applied that they've already looked at your application. So that may not be helpful in terms of recruiting, but if you're just asking and you want to network because you want to know more about the job or about the industry, like that's of course something you can do, but I think you're referencing more of the recruiting aspect, and that would be, a little bit more difficult. So you can do the same strategies I would have, but just make sure that you know that it's probably not going to be the most useful after already submitting the application.
Okay, so like when I was writing a like code email to someone, do you think it is okay for me to including like that the information that I have already submitted the application? Will it be like?
Yeah, you can reference the fact that you're really interested in this company and this job function, and that you've submitted an application, but the question and kind of the initial meetings that you're going to have shouldn't necessarily be about your application, unless it's like, what are some things that I can do to improve it, or what suggestions do you have? It shouldn't be in the form of like, now that I applied for something, can you help me with getting an interview?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sophia wrote in the chat, should students contact and network with alumni that are not necessarily in their fields of interest? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cast your request and your network as wide as you want. There's no like wrong person to network with if you're at all considering it, or it's just something that you've thought about. Like, you can network with whoever you want. Yeah, it doesn't have to be just, this is definitely the path I'm going down, so now I can only network with them. Anybody that you're interested in learning more about or learning from, you can definitely reach out to.
I had a question. This is like very much like it's pretty specific, but like last year when I was trying to get an internship over the summer, there was a possibility that for a job, but they were only accepting, say, I think it was only juniors and seniors or sophomores and juniors. So I would be eligible now. But the person that I was in contact with, I did kind of lose touch with because this was in like April or May. Has it kind of been too much time that has passed for me to like reach out now and sort of try to reconnect, or does it seem a little too forced?
No, I would say if you've already made a connection with them and it was more just not about being eligible at the time, is the recruiting cycle for what you're interested in like going on in this moment?
No, it starts in, I think after December. Like I'm sort of starting that like making the list of like jobs I want to apply for. So I was thinking about ways I could network beforehand, since you were saying that might be better to do it before the actual application process starts.
Absolutely. And I asked that because now would actually be the perfect time to reach out. And I would just reference the fact that, again, kind of give them more context since it has been a little bit of time, like, thanking them, maybe referencing something that you spoke about or something that stuck out and letting them know, I know at the time I wasn't eligible because I wasn't a junior or a senior, but at this point I am looking forward to applying this spring. And then you can ask like a question or two and kind of give a reason why maybe you can connect again. And then you can connect with them, maybe have her review your resume, advice that she has, and then you can kind of use some of the strategies maybe in that follow-up slide about maintaining relationships. Maybe like one or two of those strategies before the actual application opens. So that way at that time, you'll have a really solid foundation and possibly leverage that for recruiting.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. But you're in like that sweet spot right now. That's really good. The slides will be on Beyond Barnard's YouTube page, along with all of the other virtual presentations that we've been doing. There's links to all of those.
Hi, sorry, I have a question about sending update emails. So once you've already established that relationship with someone, you've sent a follow-up thank you email, and then after a while you want to give them updates on what you're doing. Like what wording can we use, just because it feels a little like unnatural to just be reaching like a stranger about your life.
So you're saying like after you send the thank you and then let's say like the next month you end up joining like a really cool club or something like that. So I mean you can just say, it depends on like how much time has passed, right? So like hope you're enjoying the fall so far, whatever. I know the last time we spoke, I was doing X, Y, and Z, but I wanted to give you an awesome update. I'm now going to be doing this. I'm really looking forward to, leveraging this potentially in, future applications or something like that. So you're letting them know, you're just giving an update. I mean, you're right. It isn't the most natural. Like you wouldn't necessarily be just like reaching out to a friend in that way, but it's better to at least do that because at least that will be more natural if you do need to reach out for recruiting than having even more time in between that first conversation and the last. So it could be really brief. Again, the goal is more so like, look, I'm a rock star. I now even have more things that make me a great applicant. So they're aware of that. And again, you're having more of that rapport rather than just saying like, I want your advice and now I want like your help in getting a referral.
And in terms of sending LinkedIn messages when you first want to connect to someone, like if you're trying to connect with a CEO or a CFO, how formal should that message be? Just because I know we're limited in how many characters you can have.
So you're saying the initial like connection and a personal note, that one? Yeah, I would just say, I would follow a similar format. I would say maybe in the message that you send, maybe because you know that they're a CEO or high up, like you can always say, I know your schedule, I'm sure is very busy. So I understand if, you're more limited and I can provide you with availability to accommodate your schedule or something like that. Just maybe more referencing the fact that their schedule and their availability may be more limited, so you're flexible. But in terms of the rest of the content, it's really going to be the same. We had a career insights yesterday on beauty and fashion, and one of the panelists was like, don't be afraid to reach out to CEOs and people who are high up. Like, they're interested, they were once in your position, they're interested in helping you too. And that's a really powerful connection potentially. So don't be afraid to reach out to people who are really high up. I would follow a similar structure. And then if anything, again, maybe just reference the fact that, maybe they're a little bit busier. And so if now is not a good time, you can reach out during a different time, or you could be flexible with your schedule.
And with LinkedIn asking for endorsements for certain skills, how would you suggest that we reach out to our managers?
You mean for for them to endorse you for like the skills, or to send a recommendation?
To endorse skills.
To endorse skills. So the endorsing skills, I wouldn't say is as critical as the recommendations. And so I don't know, I've had friends that have just endorsed me and liked a skill, but I wouldn't say at least for me, I think that this endorsing the skills are as important as much as you just getting those skills on your profile and saying that you have them. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's worth you spending your time asking supervisors to endorse you for certain skills. I would say if anything, maybe reaching out about possible recommendations and just getting those skills on your profile, but I wouldn't worry too much about the endorsement part.
Thank you. And one last question.
Yeah.
When you're actually meeting up with someone, whether it be via a video conference or in person, would you recommend that we wear business professional, or is business casual okay? Or
that's a great question. That's a really good question. So I always say to dress the way you would for an interview. So, and the way that you dress for an interview is always one step up in terms of formal. So if theirs is business casual, meaning they are typically wearing, they wouldn't be wearing jeans or anything casual, then I would say maybe wear a blazer or something that's a little bit more formal. If it's tech and they're super casual and they wear jeans or whatever, I would say maybe be business casual. So a blouse and slacks or a skirt or something like that. So I think you want to treat this just like you would an interview, because you never know what this can turn into. And I think by showing that level of professionalism, that in and of itself will really have you stand out.
thank you.
You're welcome. And I see in the chat, so how many alums do you recommend connecting with? As many as possible have relevant experience. Absolutely. And I would say reach out to more than less, just because again, people are busy, they may not be responding. So I think reaching out to more is always a good idea. And I think also reaching out to a range of people. So I say, reach out to recent grads, people that maybe didn't graduate as recently, senior people, junior people that went to grad school and didn't. I think as many different perspectives as you can get, the better you can assess what makes sense for you. Because if you're only asking maybe recent grads that have the same exact background, they're gonna have a similar thought process. So I think reach out to as many alums that make sense for your interests, and then also get as many different perspectives as you can, so you can figure out kind of what is the general consensus and what makes the most sense for you. You're welcome. So any other questions? Anything else I can help with?
You mentioned putting bullet points following your LinkedIn, various LinkedIn, I'm blanking out, experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Should we just copy those from the resume, or?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just copy and paste right from your resume. No need to reinvent the wheel. Take everything from your resume, even your master resume. So you're limited to the page for your resume. Take everything from your master resume and just copy and paste. That's all you have to do. And I would even say make sure you keep it in bullets. Sometimes I'll see it in sentences, but for the same reason I say use bullets on your resume, is it's just a little bit easier to read. So definitely just copy and paste it. The only big differences would be your headline and your summary section. And then of course skills and recommendations. But in terms of your actual experience, you can definitely just take that right from your resume. And if you haven't met with us about your resume before, we definitely recommend meeting with a peer career advisor. Those are the students that are trained specifically for any career related questions, but a lot of what they're doing are really first drafts, resumes, and cover letters. So if you haven't yet done that, definitely feel free to meet with them. They have a lot of availability. You can schedule that on Handshake. And then, once you have that in place, you can just create the profile or update it.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, cool. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you guys so much for participating, for coming in. It was great working with you all today, and I hope you all stay well and are enjoying your classes. So feel free to reach out if we can help with anything else. Have a good rest of the day, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.